listen to me. Listen with your whole heart. Listen with the part of you that has been bruised by waiting and strengthened by surviving. There is a moment when heaven leans close to the earth, when time pauses just long enough for destiny to catch up with obedience, and this is that moment. You have been standing in a place you did not choose, holding on to a promise you could not yet see, wondering if the silence meant abandonment. But I am telling you now, with a fire that cannot be quenched, stay right there. Do not move. Do not retreat. Do not surrender your position. They are coming. This is not the time to run. This is the time to listen, because God is speaking to those who have learned how to stand still when everything in them wanted to flee. January 23rd is not just a date on a calendar. It is a marker in the invisible realm. It is a signal that what has been aligning behind the scenes is stepping into motion. Some of you have felt an unusual pressure, an intensity you could not explain, a sense that something was shifting, but you could not name it. That pressure was not to crush you, it was to prepare you. God never brings pressure without purpose. When pressure comes, it means movement is close. When pressure comes, it means resistance has been met. When pressure comes, it means the invisible is about to become visible. That is why I say again, stay right there. If you move now, you may step out of the very place where your answer is scheduled to arrive. You must understand this truth deeply. God works in patterns, but He moves in moments. Patterns teach you faith, but moments require obedience. You have been faithful in the pattern, praying when nothing changed, believing when nothing moved, giving thanks when nothing made sense. Now you are approaching a moment. Moments do not announce themselves loudly. They whisper to those who are attentive. That is why I am pleading with you to listen, not with your ears alone, but with your spirit. There are instructions being released that cannot be heard by distracted minds or fearful hearts. God is calling those who are willing to be still enough to receive direction without explanation. Some of you are tired in a way sleep cannot fix. You are weary in a way encouragement from people has failed to heal. That is because your tiredness is not physical. It is the exhaustion of delay. Delay has a unique weight. It makes you question your discernment, your worth, and sometimes even your faith. But hear me clearly, delay is not denial, and silence is not absence. God is never late. He is precise. He arrives at the exact moment when what He gives will not destroy you, confuse you, or be wasted. If He had come earlier, you would not have had the capacity to carry what is coming now. So stay right there. The ground you are standing on has been measured by God Himself. You have been misunderstood because you refused to move when others told you to. You have been criticized because you chose obedience over convenience. People thought you were stubborn, but God calls it steadfast. People thought you were stuck, but God calls it station. There is a difference between being stuck and being positioned. Being stuck drains you. Being positioned strengthens you even when you are tired. If you still have the strength to hope, to believe, to wake up and try again, it is because God has anchored you in a place of purpose. Do not let the voices around you rush what God has intentionally slowed. There are things coming toward you that cannot find you if you leave. There are connections, answers, restorations, and shifts that have your name written on them, and they are already in motion. But they are calibrated to meet you where you are, not where your fear wants to take you. Faith is not about chasing, it is about standing. Faith is not about forcing, it is about trusting. Faith is not about knowing every step, it is about refusing to abandon the step you are on. That is why this message is urgent. Please listen, not tomorrow, not later, not when it is convenient. Listen now. God is not impressed by movement without instruction. Many have moved too early and called it faith, but faith moves only when God speaks. Waiting is not weakness, waiting is warfare. While you wait, something is being dismantled that would have harmed you. While you wait, something is being rearranged that would have confused you. While you wait, God is dealing with elements you cannot see and battles you cannot fight. If you could see what has been stopped on your behalf, you would fall to your knees in gratitude instead of standing in frustration. Stay right there. The delay is protection disguised as patience. January 23 carries a spiritual weight because it represents a crossing from endurance into encounter, a crossing from preparation into manifestation, a crossing from prayer into response. But crossings require courage. Many turn back at the edge because they are afraid of disappointment. But disappointment has already done its worst to you, and you are still here. That means it failed. Fear has already spoken its loudest threats, and you are still standing. That means it lost. What remains is obedience, and obedience always invites the presence of God into the situation. I sense deeply that some of you are on the verge of making a decision out of frustration. You are tempted to change direction, to lower your expectations, to settle for something smaller because waiting has been painful. Do not do it. This is not the time to compromise. Compromise now would cost you later. God does not ask you to wait to torment you. He asks you to wait to refine you. What He is bringing requires clarity of heart and strength of character. If it came while you were still bleeding, you might have misused it. If it came while you were still angry, you might have destroyed it. If it came while you were still unsure, I'd have abandoned it. Stay right there. Healing is happening even when you cannot feel it. There is a holy tension in the waiting place. It stretches your faith and silences your pride. It teaches you to depend on God rather than outcomes. In this place, you learn to worship without reward and trust without evidence. This is the place where God shapes those He intends to elevate. Elevation without formation is dangerous. Blessing without preparation is destructive. God loves you too much to give you something that would ruin you. So He waits until your hands are steady, your vision is clear, and your heart is anchored. Please listen to this with humility and hope. Some of you have been asking God for a sign, but God has been asking you for stillness. Signs follow obedience. They do not replace it. If God has told you to stay, staying is the sign. If God has told you to wait, waiting is the confirmation. You do not need 10 voices to validate what God has already spoken once. When God speaks, He expects trust, not negotiation. Stay right there. The noise will try to pull you away, but silence will strengthen you if you allow it. What is coming will not look like what you expected, but it will be exactly what you need. God rarely answers according to our imagination. He answers according to our destiny. Your imagination is limited by experience, but God's wisdom is not. That is why some prayers are answered differently than you planned. It's not because God ignored you, It's because He saw further than you did. When it arrives, you will understand why it could not come earlier and why it could not come another way. But understanding comes after obedience, not before it. I want you to hear this deeply. You have not wasted your time. Every tear, every prayer, every night you chose faith over despair has been recorded. God is not unjust to forget your perseverance. Nothing surrendered to God is ever lost. It may be transformed, delayed, or redirected, but it is never wasted. What feels like lost time is actually invested time, and investments always mature at the appointed moment. January 23rd is a reminder that appointed moments exist, and they do not miss those who remain positioned. Do not confuse restlessness with revelation. Restlessness often comes when something is close, not when it is far. The enemy of your faith wants you to believe that nothing is happening because he knows something is. He wants you to move prematurely so you miss the convergence. But God is saying, stay right there. Cover your heart. Guard your thoughts. Be attentive. This is a listening season. God is releasing subtle instructions that will lead to significant outcomes. You are not forgotten. You are not overlooked. You are not behind. You are exactly where God can reach you. That place you call uncomfortable is a meeting point. That space you call lonely is a training ground. That silence you call painful is a conversation waiting to happen. If you quiet your faith, You will hear God clearly. If you surrender your timeline, you will recognize His. Please listen, God is closer than you think. There are people on the way to you, helpers, partners, restorers, sent by God, not coincidence. But divine connections require divine timing. If you leave early, you will miss them. If you harden your heart, you will not recognize them. Stay right there with expectancy, not entitlement. Expectancy keeps you open. Entitlement makes you bitter. God responds to humble expectancy with overwhelming grace. You have survived too much to give up now. You have endured seasons that should have broken you, but you are still breathing, still believing, still hoping. That alone is evidence that God's hand has been on you. Do not dishonor what you survived by quitting in the final stretch. Every long journey has a moment when the destination feels unreal. That does not mean it does not exist. It means you are close enough to doubt because you are tired. Rest if you must, but do not leave. Stay right there. As you listen, you will feel a strengthening in your spirit. That strength is not from you. It is from God. God supplies strength to those who choose trust over control. You do not have to understand everything that is happening. You only have to remain faithful where you are. God does not require perfection, only persistence. And persistence always attracts divine intervention. This is a sacred moment. Do not treat it casually. What you do now will echo later. What you decide now will shape what you receive next. Stay right there with reverence, with patience, with courage. They are coming, not because you forced it, not because you earned it, but because God is faithful to His word and attentive to those who wait for Him. Please listen, because what God is releasing now will require ears that are tuned, hearts that are ready, and spirits that are willing to remain exactly where He has placed them, trusting that His timing is perfect, and His presence is sufficient, and His purpose is unfolding even now as you stand, breathe, believe, and remain. There is a discipline that few embrace, but all who carry destiny must learn. And that discipline is remaining faithful when the atmosphere changes, but the instruction does not. Many people obey God when the path is clear and the reward feels close, but true obedience is revealed when God says nothing new and yet expects you to hold your ground. This is where character is exposed and faith is refined. God watches how you respond when the excitement fades, when the encouragement quiets, and when the only thing sustaining you is the memory of His voice. Staying right there in such a season is not passive, it is an act of deep spiritual authority. You must understand that God often prepares answers by first preparing the environment. Before a breakthrough arrives, resistance increases. Before clarity appears, confusion attempts to dominate. Before provision manifests, lack tries to intimidate. This is not coincidence, it is pattern. God allows opposition to surface so that when the answer comes, you will know without doubt that it was His doing and not your effort. That is why you cannot afford to interpret difficulty as rejection. Difficulty is often the sign that the unseen realm is active. Stay right there. The struggle you feel is evidence that something is shifting in your favor. There is also a sacred responsibility that comes with waiting. While you wait, you must guard your language. Words spoken in frustration can cancel what patience was meant to secure. God listens not only to your prayers, but to your conversations, to your internal dialogue, to the way you speak about the season you are in. If you call it cursed, you will treat it as such. If you call it empty, you will miss what is growing beneath the surface. Speak with reverence even when you do not understand. Honor the process even when it stretches you. God responds to those who speak life into places that appear barren. Some of you are learning that faith is not loud confidence, but quiet certainty. It is the ability to sit in uncertainty without panic, to remain anchored when emotions fluctuate, to trust God without demanding constant reassurance. This kind of faith does not need applause. It does not need public affirmation. It is content with God's awareness. And this faith moves heaven. When God sees someone who will not abandon trust simply because clarity is delayed, He entrusts that peace person with greater influence and deeper responsibility, you are being shaped into someone who can carry weight. Lightweight faith collapses under pressure, but weight-bearing faith is formed through endurance. God is not interested in giving you something impressive if it will crush you later. He is building internal strength so that when the doors open, you walk through them with wisdom, humility, and stability. This is why the waiting has been intense. God is expanding your capacity. Stay right there. Expansion is uncomfortable, but it is necessary. There are moments when God deliberately withholds explanation, not because He is distant, but because explanation would weaken your trust. If God explained everything in advance, you would rely on logic instead of dependence. You would follow the plan instead of following Him. God desires relationship, not mere compliance. He wants your heart engaged, not just your actions. So He asks you to stay without knowing, to believe without seeing, to remain without certainty. This kind of trust honors God deeply, and He does not ignore it. Do not underestimate the power of obedience that no one sees. Hidden obedience carries public reward. The faithfulness you show in private seasons becomes the foundation for visible impact later. God records what others overlook. He sees the prayers whispered through tears, the decisions made in solitude, the moments you chose integrity when compromise was easier. Nothing done for God is insignificant. And stay right there. The unseen is accumulating value. There is also a refining happening in your expectations. God is teaching you the difference between desire and purpose. Desire wants immediate relief. Purpose seeks lasting alignment. Desire asks, when will this end? Purpose asks, what is God forming in me through this? When your questions shift, your perspective matures. You begin to see the season not as an interruption, but as instruction. And instruction always precedes promotion. You may feel isolated, but isolation is sometimes the environment God uses to sharpen discernment. When voices fall away, clarity increases. When distractions lessen, sensitivity grows. God removes noise so you can hear Him distinctly. Do not fill the silence with fear. Let it be filled with awareness. God is near and He is intentional. Stay right there and let your spirit become attuned to what He is doing beneath the surface. There is a divine timing to restoration. God does not restore prematurely because premature restoration can reopen wounds. He waits until healing has taken root, until wisdom has replaced impulse, until humility has deepened. What God restores, He restores completely. What God rebuilds, He fortifies. That is why you must not rush the process. What is coming will be stronger than what was lost, but only if you allow God to complete His work. You are learning that faith is not about controlling outcomes, but about surrendering control. Control exhausts the soul. Surrender strengthens it. When you release the need to manage every detail, you create space for God to move freely. God is not intimidated by your questions, but He is honored by your surrender. Stay right there with open hands and a willing heart. What you release, God replaces with peace. There is also a calling to maturity in this season. God is inviting you to rise above emotional reactions and walk in spiritual understanding. Emotional decisions create temporary relief but lasting consequences. Spiritual decisions may feel heavy at first, but they produce enduring peace. God is teaching you to respond rather than react, to listen rather than assume, to trust rather than rush. This is preparation for greater responsibility. Do not misinterpret the slowness of the process as lack of power. God often works slowly to ensure permanence. What comes quickly can leave quickly, but what is built deliberately endures. God is not in a hurry because He sees the end from the beginning. Your impatience cannot improve His timing, but your obedience can align you with it. Stay right there and let time do its refining work. There is a strengthening happening in your inner resolve. You are becoming less dependent on external validation and more anchored in internal conviction. This shift is crucial. Those who depend on approval are easily swayed, but those who depend on God remain steady. God is anchoring you so that future storms do not derail you. This season is giving you roots, and roots are invisible before they are invaluable. You may not feel brave, but courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to remain faithful despite it. Every time you choose trust over fear, you reinforce courage within you. God does not require you to feel strong. He asks you to act with trust. Strength follows obed. Eons. Stay right there and watch how courage grows quietly within you. There is also a lesson in gratitude unfolding. Gratitude in waiting seasons is a powerful declaration of trust. When you give thanks before the answer arrives, you acknowledge God's faithfulness ahead of time. Gratitude shifts your focus from what is missing to what is being prepared. It softens the heart and sharpens awareness. God responds to grateful hearts because gratitude recognizes His sovereignty. You are closer than you realize. Often the final stretch feels the longest because anticipation heightens sensitivity. Do not allow fatigue to distort perception. Rest your heart, steady your mind, and remain attentive. God has not brought you this far to abandon you now. Stay right there with hope renewed and vision clarified. The season you are in is teaching you to walk with God rather than ahead of Him. Walking with God requires pace, patience, and presence. It is not about speed, it is about alignment. When you walk with God, you learn to value direction over distance. You learn that being in the right place matters more than being in a fast place. Stay right there and keep your steps synchronized with His leading. What God is doing now will one day become the testimony that strengthens others. The endurance you are developing will become the wisdom you share. The patience you are learning will become the guidance you offer. God never wastes a season. He transforms endurance into influence and waiting into authority. Remain faithful, remain attentive, remain positioned. God is at work, and those who stay will witness the unfolding of what only He could have orchestrated in His time, according to His purpose. As you continue to stand, to listen, to trust, and to remain exactly where obedience has placed you. There is a moment when God asks you to trust not only His power, but His wisdom. Power impresses the mind, but wisdom settles the soul. You may believe God can change things instantly, but do you trust that He knows the best way and the best time to do it? This is where many falter. They believe in God's ability, but struggle with His method. Yet God's method is always shaped by love, foresight, and eternal perspective. He sees what you cannot see, including the consequences of answers given too soon or in the wrong form. Staying right there is an acknowledgement that God's wisdom exceeds your urgency. You are being taught how to live by direction rather than emotion. Emotions are real, but they are not reliable leaders. They fluctuate with circumstances, fatigue, and disappointment. Direction, however, comes from God and remains steady even when everything else shifts. When you stay where God has placed you, despite emotional turbulence, you declare that God's voice holds more authority than your feelings. This kind of submission refines the spirit and strengthens discernment. Over time, you begin to recognize the quiet assurance of God, even when emotions are unset. There is also a purification of motive happening in this season. God is examining not just what you want, but why you want it. Motives shape outcomes. A good desire driven by unhealthy motive can lead to harm. God waits until motives are aligned with His nature, pure, selfless, and grounded, before releasing certain blessings. This is not punishment, it is protection. What God gives in alignment with pure motive brings peace instead of anxiety. Stay right there while your heart is being clarified and your intentions refined. You are learning that. Silence from God does not mean inactivity by God. Silence is often God's way of inviting you into deeper trust. When He does not speak, He is not absent. He is observing how you carry what He has already said. Do you panic or do you rest? Do you complain or do you remain faithful? Silence reveals maturity. God entrusts more to those who can handle silence without rebellion. Staying right there in silence is a powerful declaration that you trust His character, not just His communication. There is a strengthening of spiritual endurance taking place. Endurance is not dramatic, it is steady. It does not announce itself, it persists. God is building in you the ability to remain consistent even when inspiration fades. This endurance will serve you in seasons of responsibility when enthusiasm alone will not be enough. What you are developing now will sustain you later. Stay right there and allow endurance to complete its work within. And you may notice that your tolerance for superficial things has decreased. Conversations that once satisfied you now feel empty. Distractions that once entertained you now feel heavy. This is not boredom, it is elevation. God is shifting your appetite towards substance. He is drawing you away from noise and toward depth. When God prepares someone for greater insight, He often removes the desire for shallow fulfillment. Stay right there and embrace the narrowing of focus. Depth always precedes influence. There is also a recalibration of trust happening. God is teaching you not to place ultimate confidence in systems, people, or outcomes. These can fail, shift, or disappoint. God alone remains constant. When trust is properly aligned, fear loses its grip. You become less shaken by uncertainty because your foundation is secure. Staying right there is an act of realignment, placing God back at the center of expectation and hope. You are being trained to recognize divine timing, not by external signs, but by internal peace. When the time is right, there will be clarity without chaos, movement without panic, and confidence without arrogance. God's timing carries a distinct calm even in the midst of challenge. Until that peace accompanies the instruction, you remain. Stay right there and do not confuse urgency with readiness. There is a quiet authority forming in you. Authority does not come from position, it comes from alignment. When your will is aligned with God's will, our presence carries weight. People may not understand why, but they will sense stability, wisdom, and calm in you. This authority is not loud or forceful. It is grounded and assured. It is born in seasons like this, where obedience is chosen without applause. Stay right there as authority takes shape within you. You are also learning to discern between opportunity and assignment. Not every open door is from God. Some doors open to test your discernment, not to redirect your path. God assigns before He advances. An assignment carries responsibility and purpose, not just excitement. If you move toward every opportunity, you may abandon the assignment God has given you. Stay right there until God makes the assignment unmistakably clear. There is a sacredness to restraint that God honors deeply. Restraint says you trust God to act without your interference. It says you believe that waiting will not diminish you but will refine you. In a world that celebrates haste, restraint is a testimony of faith. God sees those who restrain themselves and entrusts them with greater influence because they have proven they will not misuse it. Stay right there and let restraint speak on your behalf. You may feel that others are advancing while you remain. Do not measure your journey by someone else's timeline. God designs paths individually. Comparison distorts purpose and breeds dissatisfaction. What God is preparing for you requires a specific foundation. Others may not need the same preparat ion because they carry different responsibilities. Stay right there and trust that God knows what He is building in you. There is an invitation in this season to deepen your awareness of God's presence. Presence is not confined to dramatic moments. It is woven into daily obedience. When you learn to recognize God in the ordinary, you are prepared to encounter Him in the extraordinary. Staying right there allows you to develop consistency and awareness, turning every moment into an opportunity for connection. You are being taught that faith is not proven by how loudly you declare it, but by how faithfully you live it. Consistency over time reveals true conviction. God values steady faith more than sudden declarations. What you practice daily shapes who you become. Stay right there and let your daily choices testify to your trust in God. There is also a deepening of humility occurring. Waiting humbles the heart and softens pride. It reminds you that control is an illusion and dependence is essential. Humility attracts grace, and grace sustains you through seasons of uncertainty. God gives guidance to the humble because they are teachable. Stay right there and let humility keep your heart open and responsive. You are approaching a season where what you have learned in obscurity will be required in visibility. The patience, discipline, and discernment you are cultivating now will be tested later. God prepares His servants privately before He positions them publicly. Staying there ensures that when the moment comes, you will not be overwhelmed by it. There's a growing awareness that God is enough, not as a phrase, but as a lived reality. When God becomes sufficient, anxiety diminishes and contentment increases. You stop chasing fulfillment and begin walking in purpose. This shift changes how you approach everything. Stay right there as sufficiency takes root and reshapes your priorities. You are being shaped into someone who listens deeply. Listening is a rare discipline. It requires stillness, patience, and humility. God speaks to those who create space for His voice. Noise competes with clarity, and haste interferes with hearing. Staying right there creates the environment where listening becomes possible. There is also an awakening of inner clarity. As distractions fade, understanding sharpens. You begin to see patterns, recognize lessons, and discern God's hand in ways you could not before. Clarity is a reward of patience. It cannot be forced. It must be cultivated. Stay right there and allow clarity to continue unfolding. You are not waiting aimlessly. You are waiting intentionally. Intention transforms waiting from stagnation into preparation. Every day you remain faithful, you are aligning more closely with God's purpose. Alignment brings peace even before answers arrive. Stay right there and let alignment continue its quiet work. God is not testing your endurance to prove your worth. He already knows your value. He is strengthened in your capacity so that when the next season unfolds, you will walk in it with wisdom, stability, and grace. Capacity determines sustainability. What God intends to last, He prepares thoroughly. Stay right there as preparation continues. You are learning to trust God beyond outcomes. Trust that is dependent on results is fragile. Trust that rests in God's character is unshakable. When outcomes change, character remains. God is inviting you into this deeper level of trust where peace is not postponed until answers arrive. Stay right there and let trust mature into confidence. There is an unseen celebration when you choose obedience over escape. Heaven responds to faithfulness even when the earth remains quiet. What you do in obedience echoes beyond what you can perceive. Stay right there, knowing that God is attentive, intentional, and actively involved, continuing to work in ways that exceed understanding, shaping what is coming, aligning what is necessary, and sustaining you as you remain, listen, trust, and stand firmly where His guidance has placed you. There is a sacred exchange that happens when you choose obedience over relief. Relief seeks immediate comfort, but obedience seeks lasting alignment. God often withholds relief to secure alignment because alignment protects you long after comfort fades. You may not feel ease in this season, but you are gaining accuracy. Accuracy in hearing, accuracy in discerning, accuracy in responding. God values accuracy because it keeps you within the boundaries of purpose. Stay right there, because accuracy is being sharpened, and with it comes authority that cannot be easily shaken. You are being trained to recognize that God's guidance is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is subtle, persistent, and quiet. It does not demand attention. It requires attentiveness. Those who rush miss it. Those who slow down perceive it. God does not compete with noise. He waits for stillness. This is why remaining where you are matters. Stillness refines perception. When your soul settles, your awareness deepens, and you begin to sense God's direction not as pressure but as assurance. There is a difference between delay and discipline. Delay frustrates those who resist discipline, but discipline strengthens those who submit to it. God disciplines not to restrict you, but to prepare you for freedom that does not destroy you. Freedom without discipline becomes chaos. God is forming discipline in you through consistency, patience, and restraint. Stay right there. Discipline is being established quietly, and it will serve you powerfully. You are learning how to remain steady when outcomes are uncertain. This steadiness is rare and valuable. God entrusts greater influence to those who do not collapse under ambiguity. When you can remain faithful without guarantees, you demonstrate trust at a deeper level. God responds to that trust by expanding responsibility. What you are carrying now may feel heavy, but it is increasing. In your strength, stay right there. Strength grows under resistance. There is also a stripping away of false urgency. Not every impulse to act is divine. Some impulses are born from fear, comparison, or impatience. God is teaching you to pause before acting, to weigh decisions with wisdom rather than impulse. This pause is not hesitation, it is discernment. Discernment protects you from costly mistakes. Stay right there and allow discernment to mature. You may feel unseen, but invisibility is sometimes God's gift. In hidden seasons, pride is weakened and authenticity is strengthened. You are learning who you are without applause, without recognition, without validation. This is crucial. Those who know who they are in obscurity remain grounded in visibility. God is securing your identity so that future recognition does not distort it. Stay right there. Identity is being anchored. There is a deepening respect for process forming within you. You are beginning to understand that shortcuts often cut away necessary preparation. God's process may be longer, but it is safer. It addresses roots, not just symptoms. It transforms the inner life, not just external circumstances. This transformation is lasting. Stay right there and honor the process. What is built properly endures. You are also learning that trust is an action, not a feeling. Trust is demonstrated by what you choose to do when feelings fluctuate. When you continue to act with integrity, patience, and faithfulness, despite uncertainty, you are trusting God actively. God responds to active trust. Stay right there and keep choosing faith through action. There is a refining of vision happening. Vision that is too broad becomes overwhelming. Vision that is too narrow becomes limiting. God is clarifying your vision so that it is focused, sustainable, and aligned. Clarity comes through waiting. When distractions fade, purpose sharpens. Stay right there as vision continues to be refined. You are becoming more comfortable with unanswered questions. This is not resignation, it is maturity. Maturity accepts that not everything must be understood immediately. God reveals what is necessary for obedience, not everything for curiosity. When you obey with limited information, you demonstrate trust in God's wisdom. Stay right there. Understanding will come in stages. There is also a strengthening of your spiritual posture. You are learning to stand without striving, to wait without weakening, to trust without demanding. This posture invites peace even in uncertainty. Peace is not the absence of challenge. It is the presence of confidence in God. Stay right there and let peace govern your responses. You may sense that your prayers are changing. They're becoming less about outcomes and more about alignment. This is growth. When prayers shift from control to surrender, they become powerful. God responds quickly to prayers rooted in humility and trust. Stay right there as your prayer life deepens. There is an awakening of responsibility alongside expectation. God does not bless without accountability. What He brings will require stewardship, wisdom, and consistency. This season is teaching you how to carry responsibility without being overwhelmed by it. Stay right there. Capacity is being expanded. You are also learning the value of patience as a strength, not a weakness. Patience preserves clarity, guards integrity, and protects relationships. God values patience because it reflects trust in His timing. Those who are patient demonstrate confidence in God's faithfulness. Stay right there and let patience continue its work. There is a quiet confidence forming that does not depend on circumstances. This confidence comes from knowing that God is involved, attentive, and intentional. It is not loud or boastful. It is calm and steady. This confidence will anchor you in future transitions. Stay right there as confidence replaces anxiety. You are learning that God's presence is not measured by emotional intensity. Sometimes His presence is felt deeply, other times it is known quietly. Both are valid. Faith does not chase feelings, it rests in truth. Stay right there and remain faithful regardless of emotional fluctuation. There is a growing awareness that obedience now prevents regret later. Many regrets are born from decisions made too quickly or out of fear. God is protecting you from future regret by slowing you down. Stay right there and trust that restraint now will bring peace later. You're also being taught to value consistency over intensity. Intensity can fade, but consistency sustains. God works through steady faithfulness, daily obedience, and persistent trust. Stay right there and keep showing up with consistency. There is an internal shift from striving to abiding. Striving exhausts the soul, abiding strengthens it. Abiding means remaining connected to God regardless of circumstances. This connection sustains you even when answers are delayed. Stay right there and continue to abide. You are being shaped into someone who listens before acting, discerns before deciding, and trusts before understanding. These qualities will serve you well in every season that follows. God is intentional in His preparation. Stay right there as preparation continues. There is also an increase in spiritual sensitivity. You are noticing subtle shifts, quiet nudges, and gentle warnings. This sensitivity is cultivated through stillness and obedience. Stay right there and remain attentive. You are learning that faithfulness in small, unseen choices carries great weight. God values how you handle what seems insignificant. These moments shape character. Stay right there and honor the small acts of obedience. There is a deepening realization that God's plans are not fragile. They do not collapse because of waiting. They are strengthened by it. Stay right there and trust the stability of God's purpose. You are not standing still, you are standing firm. Firm. S resists pressure without losing integrity. God is forming firmness within you. Stay right there and let firmness take root. There is an unseen alignment happening between your readiness and God's release. Alignment requires patience. Stay right there as alignment completes its work. You are learning to trust God not just for provision, but for direction. Direction prevents unnecessary detours. Stay right there and remain guided. There is a quiet resolve settling into your spirit. This resolve will carry you forward when the moment comes. Stay right there and let resolve strengthen. God is not distant. He is present, purposeful, and precise. Every moment of waiting is known. Every act of obedience is seen. Every decision to remain is honored. Stay right there, listening, trusting, remaining attentive as God continues to work with intention, wisdom, and care, shaping what is ahead while strengthening who you are becoming. There is a hidden strength in those who refuse to abandon their post. God assigns positions before He releases results. When you stay, you're declaring that obedience matters more than comfort. Comfort fades, but obedience leaves a mark on eternity. God honors those who remain steady when nothing around them affirms their choice. This steadiness is not stubbornness, it is surrender anchored in trust. You are not clinging to a place out of fear, you are remaining because God placed you there with intention. You are learning that faith is not proved by how quickly circumstances change, but by how deeply your trust is rooted. Shallow trust demands immediate evidence. Deep trust rests even when evidence is delayed. God is cultivating deep trust within you. This trust does not shake when questions arise. It does not retreat when clarity is postponed. It stands firm because it knows that God's faithfulness is not dependent on visible progress. There is also a transformation happening in how you perceive time. You are beginning to understand that time is not an enemy, but a servant in God's hands. God uses time to mature, to align, to protect. When you rush, you work against time. When you wait, time works for you. Stay right there and let time become an ally rather than a threat. What unfolds at the right time carries peace that haste can never produce. You are being taught the power of remaining teachable. Teachable hearts receive guidance. Rigid hearts resist it. God speaks to those who are willing to adjust, to learn, to grow. Waiting seasons soften the heart and open the mind. They remove the illusion that you already know everything. Stay right there with humility and you will receive insight that cannot be learned in motion. There is a sacred awareness forming within you that obedience is cumulative. One act of obedience builds upon another. Every day you remain faithful, you are adding weight to your spiritual foundation. Foundations are built slowly because they must carry much. God is not in a hurry when He is built. In something meant to last. Stay right there and let the foundation deepen. You are also discovering that God's guidance often comes as confirmation rather than excitement. Excitement can be misleading. Confirmation is steady. Confirmation brings peace, even when the path is difficult. God confirms through consistency, through inner assurance, through alignment with wisdom. Stay right there and pay attention to what remains consistent. God often speaks through what does not change. There is a purification of expectation happening. God is teaching you to expect His presence before His provision, His direction before His deliverance. When presence becomes the priority, provision follows naturally. When direction is valued, outcomes are aligned properly. Stay right there and let your expectations be reordered. Proper expectation protects you from disappointment. You are learning that obedience does not always feel productive, but it is always purposeful. Productivity is measured by visible output. Purpose is measured by alignment. God is more concerned with alignment than appearance. What looks unproductive to others may be deeply productive in the unseen. Stay right there and trust the unseen work. There is also an awakening to the cost of premature movement. Every step taken outside of God's timing carries consequences. God is sparing you from unnecessary battles, wasted effort, and avoidable regret. Waiting is not lost time, it is preserved energy. Stay right there and allow PR. Observation to work in your favor. You may notice that your discernment is sharpening. You are less impressed by urgency and more attentive to truth. You are learning to ask not just whether something is possible, but whether it is a sign. This discernment will protect your future. Stay right there as discernment continues to mature. There is a strengthening of your inner witness. You are becoming more aware of when something aligns and when it does not. This awareness grows in stillness. Movement can dull it. Waiting sharpens it. Stay right there and honor this growing sensitivity. You are also being trained to trust God beyond logic. Logic has limits. God does not. There will be moments when obedience does not make sense intellectually, but it will resonate spiritually. God does not contradict wisdom, but He often surpasses understanding. Stay right there and let trust extend beyond logic into surrender. There is a lesson unfolding about perseverance without resentment. Waiting can harden the heart if bitterness is allowed to grow. God is teaching you to persevere with gratitude, to endure with grace. This posture preserves joy even in delay. Stay right there and guard your heart carefully. You are learning that faithfulness is not about dramatic gestures, but consistent devotion. God values daily trust more than occasional intensity. It is the steady flame that warms, not the sudden spark that fades. Stay right there and keep the flame steady. There is also a realization that God's promises are not fragile. They do not expire because of delay. They do not weaken because of silence. God's word carries authority beyond time. Stay right there and rest in the permanence of what God has spoken. You are becoming less reactive and more reflective. Reflection creates space for wisdom. Reactivity creates room for regret. God is slowing you down so that reflection can guide your decisions. Stay right there and then let wisdom lead. There is a deepening sense of responsibility forming alongside hope. Hope without responsibility can become fantasy. Responsibility grounds hope in action and stewardship. God is preparing you to carry what you hope for. Stay right there as responsibility grows. You are also learning to trust God with outcomes you cannot control. Control creates anxiety, trust releases peace. God never asked you to control the outcome, only to obey the instruction. Stay right there and release what was never yours to manage. There is an internal alignment happening between your desires and God's purpose. Misaligned desires create frustration. Aligned desires produce peace. Waiting allows alignment to occur naturally. Stay right there as alignment completes its work. You are discovering that God's faithfulness is revealed most clearly in seasons where you have nothing to rely on but Him. This reliance deepens intimacy. Intimacy strengthens trust. Trust sustains obedience. Stay right there as intimacy grows. There is also a growing confidence that does not depend on circumstances. This confidence is rooted in knowing that God is attentive, intentional, and involved. It does not need reassurance from outcomes. Stay right there and let confidence settle deeply. You are learning to listen without rushing to respond. Listening creates understanding. Understanding guides obedience. God speaks to those who listen patiently. Stay right there and keep listening. There is a refining of your inner dialogue. Fear-based thoughts are being replaced with truth-centered awareness. What you tell yourself matters. God is teaching you to align your thoughts with trust rather than anxiety. Stay right there and guard your mind. You are not being delayed, you are being prepared. Preparation is an act of love. God prepares those He intends to entrust. Stay right there and allow preparation to finish its work. There is a steady strengthening happening beneath the surface. You may not feel it, but it is real. God works deeply before He works visibly. Stay right there as depth is formed. You are learning to value obedience even when it feels costly. What costs you now will bless you later. God never asked for obedience without purpose. Stay right there and trust the return. There is an assurance quietly settling that God's timing is not only perfect, but kind. It spares you from what you cannot yet carry and positions you for what you can. Stay right there, anchored in trust, attentive in spirit, faithful in action, as God continues to work with precision, wisdom, and care, shaping both the moment that is coming and the strength required to stand when it arrives. Now is the moment to decide what kind of faith you will live with. Not the kind that speaks only when it is convenient. Not the kind that believes only when results are visible, but the kind that stands firm when nothing else is certain. Examine your life with honesty. Look at where you have been resisting stillness, where impatience has tried to disguise itself as wisdom, where fear has pressured you to move ahead of God. Lay those places open before God, not with shame, but with surrender. Surrender is not loss, it is alignment. And alignment releases power that striving never could. Let this be the moment you renew your purpose, not by chasing something new, but by recommitting to what God has already entrusted to you. Purpose is not always found in motion. Often it is revealed in faithfulness. Decide that you will no longer measure your life by speed, applause, or comparison. Measure it by obedience, by integrity, by your willingness to remain where God has placed you until He speaks otherwise. This decision will reshape how you walk, how you wait, and how you worship. Choose today to walk closer to God, not by adding noise, but by deepening trust. Draw near with humility, with attentiveness, with a heart that listens more than it demands. Let your steps slow enough to recognize His guidance, your thoughts settle enough to hear His truth, your spirit quiet enough to feel His assurance. Nearness to God is not built through intensity alone, but through consistency, reverence, and willingness to yield. Let courage rise within you, not the courage to rush, but the courage to remain faithful. Let resolve take root, not the resolve to control outcomes, but the resolve to trust God completely. Stand where you are with clarity and confidence, knowing that obedience positions you, patience strengthens you, and trust anchors you. Refuse to abandon what God is shaping simply because the process has been difficult. Leave this moment determined to live differently. Speak with faith, wait with expectation, act with integrity, listen with intention, walk with awareness that God is present, purposeful, and precise. Let your life become a testimony not of haste, but of holiness, not of anxiety, but of assurance, not of fear, but of trust. And as you remain, as you listen, as you obey, let this truth settle unshakably within you. God is faithful, God is near, God is at work, and a life aligned with Him, fully surrendered, deeply attentive, unwaveringly obedient, will never be ordinary, never be empty, and never be without meaning.